All right, so welcome everybody to the STEM+Gender Wikipedia workshop. It's being co-hosted by the UB Gender Institute and the Women in STEM Cooperative. So again, like I was saying before we started recording, this was originally an in-person event for spring 2020, but we're excited that we're finally able to recalibrate it to this new format. And so we are excited to get started. So I'm gonna start with just a little bit of like what is important about editing Wikipedia, and beyond that, what's really important about increasing the representation of women and non-binary people in Wikipedia, especially under their STEM entries, because we know that this is a male-dominated field. So my name is Hilary Vandenbark. I'm the graduate assistant here at the Gender Institute. My email's there if you'd like to follow up with me on anything that we've talked about today. So I'll just go ahead and get started. So why is editing Wikipedia important? So last year, The Guardian and the New York Times released the report that there is a significant Wikipedia gender gap, where only 15 to 20% of people who edit Wikipedia identify as women, and only approximately 20% of biographical articles or entries are about women. And so this means that entries about men outnumber entries about women by a ratio of about 4 to 1. And so again, like not just the lack of representation for women in general in Wikipedia, but specifically in the STEM fields, right? And so again, the American Association of University Women found that only 28% of the STEM workforce were women in the United States, and they are vastly outnumbered by men in STEM college programs. So we know somewhere between like middle school and high school and college, we're losing a lot of women in STEM. And then there's additional barriers. Again, like when we think about women of color, like I know several women of color who originally intended to major in computer sciences, but dropped out because no one in their courses looked like them, and none of their professors looked like them. And so those kinds of things that are like seem subtle, but have this kind of collective effect of underrepresenting women in STEM. All right, so what are we doing to solve the problem? So this is part of the genesis of these workshops. We did one that focused on the humanities and gender in the fall, and so this one we're focusing on STEM. But one of the biggest barriers is really finding role models, right? Like Kamala Harris in her speech just said, you can't be what you can't see, right? And that's kind of a common refrain when we're thinking about representation. And so we think about the elevating of women in STEM and pop culture, whether it's, there's this new show on Netflix called Emily's Wonder Lab that promotes women in STEM. And then there's also like, you know, you think about the Big Bang Theory with women scientists and stuff. So you see a lot more pop culture representation and stuff, but so it's getting better, but there's still a lot of work to do, right? And so again, like we talk a lot about in the Women in STEM Cooperative, that girls in grade school tend to start getting math anxiety. They tend to start, you know, giving up on STEM fields somewhere in like middle school and early high school and stuff. So then by the time they get to college, where we're interacting with them, again, they've already kind of been set up to fail in some ways. And so how do we correct that? How do we encourage that? So again, like people that are doing things to solve the problems is here at UB or in Western New York, we have the Women in STEM Cooperative, which partners with Harvard and a bunch of other schools and places to provide webinars in the annual summit. We have our next webinar next week. Becky, do you want to remind me what the topic is for next week?
Sure. It is about creating community and the recruitment and advisors and how they have done that through this pandemic related to the STEM community.
Right, and we see that like during this pandemic, women in STEM is crucially important, right? Like we have women scientists that are working on developing vaccines. We have Dr. Deborah Birx, who serves as one of the leaders of the coronavirus task force, right? So we see how important it is to support women in STEM precisely because we need diversity in our responses to things like COVID-19, right? So there's also a very famous organization called Girls Who Code, which teaches girls how to code computer science language, whether it's like HTML or JavaScript, right? They have a bunch of different programs where they help under-resourced girls learn how to code and make their own things. When I was in New Orleans, I had the honor of working with a really small nonprofit called Electric Girls, which does a weekly summer program for teaching girls how to do all sorts of STEM things, whether it's computer programming, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and they have all these projects where girls can kind of go where their interests are and stuff. But that was a really great organization that I was honored to work with. And then I found some of these just in researching for this presentation, the Schlumberger Foundation, which has this Faculty of the Future program, which really tries to get people, women in STEM, from the undergraduate to the graduate to the faculty. So that way our teaching staff can represent a diversity of audiences. And then there's also the STEMettes, which particularly focuses on Black women in STEM. And so this here is April Erickson Jackson. She's an aerospace engineer. And so we're gonna come back to her because her page needs some updating. So we're gonna come back to her in a minute. And so this is also like really a record time for women in STEM, right? Like we are making substantial progress, right? But there are still those barriers. So just, a few weeks ago, Andrea Ghez became the 4th woman to be awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics, and Emmanuelle Carpentier and Jennifer Doudna became the 6th and 7th women to be awarded a Nobel Prize in Chemistry for their joint project on gene editing. And then this was in 2019, but Katherine Johnson had her 2nd facility named after her. I'm sure that many of you know that she was the subject of Hidden Figures, which talked about the Black women scientists who made NASA really possible and stuff. So the Independent Verification and Validation Facility in her hometown was just renamed for her in 2019. And here's a photo of her near her retirement in 1983. So I wanted to talk to you and just see what kind of names come up for you, right? Because when I was thinking about this exercise, right, like Mary Curie comes up and stuff, but like, who are we really forgetting? So I'm gonna actually stop sharing my screen. And we can just drop some names in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and let me know. And let's go look at some Wikipedia pages to see if they exist or what they look like. All right, perfect. So we do have some. So I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so we had Ava Lovelace. Doesn't seem right. Why won't you give me the chat here? All right, so let's try the other one. We've got Esther Takuchi. I am probably butchering that. I do apologize.
It's Takeuchi, but that's okay.
Takeuchi. Okay, thank you. Okay. So this one, so we can see that she doesn't have a photo here. Right, and it looks like she's still alive and stuff, so I'm...
Oh, yes, she's still working at, I think, Brookhaven now or somewhere.
Excellent. And so this is kind of like pretty standard for a Wikipedia article, right? Just like the initial bio and the life and career. and then, you know, notable contributions and awards. All right, what did I just do here? Oh, so we got to revision history there. And then down here we have just like her website, right? Further readings, and also the references throughout the article. Okay. So this part is not quite as, oh, Ada Lovelace, thank you. I'm just like that. I mean, I know that that sounds right, but it didn't quite sound right. Okay. Yep, so Ada Lovelace, her page is actually pretty full, right? Which is great and stuff, like lots of photos, and we're going to talk about photos here in a minute. But yeah, this is actually a pretty fulsome page, right? And so I think like those things are important. What I hope that we can, in our talking about Wikipedia and science, is I feel like we have like these pioneers, right? Like Mary Curie, Ada Lovelace, right? We have some of those pioneers that we've uncovered their history, but what about like the people that are making history right now? So yeah, does anybody have any thoughts that they'd like to share on that?
There's several in the chat now, if you can get to it.
Yeah. So we've got Wangari Maathai. For some reason, it's not letting me access the chat when I'm sharing my screen and stuff. So I'm having to like bounce back and forth. So I apologize if that's kind of a headache for you visually.
If it's easier, I can read the chat to you.
Oh yeah, I came across this person during my research. Yeah, and so like you see like, you know, she's got a Nobel Peace Prize and she has done a lot of work, and unfortunately she passed away some years ago. Let me see here. Yeah, Becky, if you could just read me the next name.
There's two more from Tabzira. Tanya Moore, M-O-O-R-E. And I'll give you the other one when you're ready.
Nope. How's Tanya spelled?
T-A-N-Y-A. You had it correct. Tabzira, is there a field she's in that might help? There we go. Well, the other name is a little bit more involved, but it is Kizmika, if I'm saying that right. So it's K-I-Z-Z-A-M-E-K-I-A, middle initial S as in Sam, and then Corbett, C-O-R-B-E-T.
Perfect. It just came up.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, excellent. See, like this is right on point, right, with the pandemic. She's a viral immunologist. She works at NIAID and NIH stuff, but her page does look a little blank, right? I'm sure that there's like it has an honors section here, but I'm sure that there's probably more since 2013, given her work and career. So this is just kind of gives you a sense of like some people have like really fulsome pages and some people don't. And then I'm going to show you. So this is a scientist who's a NASA engineer, and she does not even have a page. So that's something that we can definitely talk about. All right. So we are going to just do some edit 101. And so does everybody here have a Wikipedia account?
Feel free to unmute yourself and answer.
Yes, but it's been a while. So is there supposed to be a login and everything? Probably, right?
Yeah, so here we have, if you haven't created an account yet, you can just go to wikipedia.org. If your primary language is English, but if your primary language isn't English, like feel free to go to the Wikipedia of your primary language, because those are also really important. I am monolingual. I'm pretty typical American. I don't speak other languages, unfortunately. So I kind of rely on this one, but you would just go over here to the top right corner, create an account, or if you already have one, log in. And so when you choose a username, you definitely want to make sure that it's not something super identifiable to you. I kind of forgot about that, and mine's super identifiable when we go over to my page. But it's just going to ask you to make a password and do the CAPTCHA security check. And then, so I'll give people a few minutes to do that. And I'm gonna drop in the chat once we do this tutorial part. I'm gonna drop in some of the YouTube tutorials that I found. Some of the UCLA's library has a really great Wikipedia tutorial module that you can go through and just learn how to do it, follow along with them, that I found really helpful. So I'll drop some things in the chat if we want to kind of move on to what it looks like to edit.
That's fine. That's fine.
And again, this will be recorded so we can, come back to it again. So here is April Erickson Jackson, who we talked about earlier during the presentation part. Here is her page. It's, it's kind of bare, and I don't have a lot to add really, except that there was an award, which I found ironic because it's one of the things that's cited down here in number 8. From the National Society of Black Physicists, honored her with an award. But it's not here listed under awards, so we're going to go ahead and list it. So up here at the top, do you see where it says article, talk, read, edit, view history? So these are tabs that are really important to kind of get to know. So on the talk page, there might not be much going on. But this is where editors, if they're, if they have like a disagreement about how a page should be modified, right? This is where they can talk about it and like kind of make their cases for why it should be a certain way. A lot of like basic biographies don't have a lot of controversy, but right, if you get into more complex or more controversial figures, right, like sometimes the talk page can become quite contentious. And so your default when you're logged into your account is on read, because it assumes that you're just here to read like a normal viewer. But if you see right next to it, edit source, we come to here. And so you see that this is just like, that this is kind of in code, right? Like you see like brackets and stuff, but we want to kind of make this a little friendlier. Okay, where do we come to? So we want to do like, this is a minor edit. Okay, so this is a lot easier. We're gonna come to So this one, not sure how it did that, but it looks like it's gonna let me edit here. So I'm just gonna come down here, and I'm just gonna say National Society of Black Physicists. That was in 2019. All right, so now I need to just add, so I don't actually need to add a reference for that because it's right here. This is the same link and everything. So it's already going to show up, and none of the other awards are referenced. But if we wanted, let's say we wanted to come up here and just insert a reference. So we're going to come up to Cite, and it's going to ask us to do the citation. Oh, great, Sally. And so here's just, again, the link here, and we're just going to put the URL, and we're just going to do generate automatically. And then just by putting insert, it just puts us at number 9. And then here, what we can do is we can add more information about our reference, right? So source date, this was February 23, 2019. And the URL access date, November 11th, name of the website, and then we can apply changes. And so this is, you'll see sometimes, especially on more controversial pages or pages where there might be a lot of contention, is that you'll see multiple different references at the end of a sentence. And so that's pretty normal. So again, like if it's something controversial or contentious, right, the more relevant sources, the more appropriate sources that you can access, having multiple citations really does help. And I'm just going to actually just delete. All right, so that is just the basics of just editing. You want to, you can edit if you are much more comfortable than I in the coding edit page. You can certainly edit in the code page, but I prefer in the viewer one. And then also, like, one thing that you can do, and here we're just going to publish changes. And so what I'm going to do is describe what I edited. So I added National Society Black Physicists Award. Oh my goodness, how do you spell physicists? Okay, coming back up here because I can't spell today. All right, and then this is a minor edit, right? I didn't totally change the content. I just added another piece of biographical information. So I didn't like make any claims about like where she was born or anything. Nothing that would substantially change the narrative of her page. So this is a minor edit, and we're going to go ahead and publish changes. And your edit was published. So great. So another tool I want to show you before we kind of go into free edit time is the Sandbox. And so the Sandbox is great because it helps you you can totally build your own page in the Sandbox. So let's say you're like really nervous about editing a page or you want to start a new page from scratch. Doing the Sandbox really helps you do that, right? And so then it can transfer from your Sandbox where you get to play, right? It's kind of indicative in the name. And then you can just decide to publish the page, right? So one nice thing to think about is, so let's say we're going to do woman scientist blank. Okay, And so let's say we're going to do a biography. So we're going to do equal equal, and then name of scientist. Right, so this is how you create headings and stuff, is by just typing the equal sign twice. And then you'll see when you do that, that second line, that header line came up. And then we're just going to go early life and career. Oh, career synopsis. All right, and so then, like, you know, we'll go equal equal early life and career. That's a pretty common one. And then we're going to go awards, equal teaching, right? So you'll see that we have these. So this is just basically how you would distinguish between body text and headers, right? So this is if you feel like a page is totally missing an entire section, this is how you could do it, right? And stuff is to just like copy and paste over from an existing page what you have, and then add in the section that you want, add your citations, and then you could come up here to publish page, which we're not going to do that, right? That's kind of the point of the sandbox, is to just play around. So then the last thing that I really want to show you is how you can find images to add into pages. So I'm going to actually come over here to Wikimedia Commons. And so I'll drop this in the chat, but this is the kind of image component of Wikipedia. So like, let's say we need to add a picture of Katherine Johnson. We're going to go ahead and just search for her. And we know that all of these images are free to use on Wikipedia because they're just in the public domain. So this is something that you can't always find what you're looking for. So finding things in public domain, like the Library of Congress, is a really great resource for finding images. But again, you can't always find what you're looking for. So sometimes you might not have an image to go with your article, and that's okay. It's nicer if there's images, but it's okay if there isn't. So I think that was everything that I had in terms of how to edit. But here I'm going to talk to you about some of the really great things that are going on in Wikipedia, especially related to women in STEM, as well as like some tutorials, okay? So here again is like the Women in Science page, right? That kind of gives just the history of it. So that might be a big page that could, you know, use some constant updating, right? Like I know some people just have a page or two that they just keep checking. Then there's like women in STEM fields more specifically, right? And this one has like a very international approach. Everything coming from the top on Zoom is making it difficult to navigate. So this is Matilda Jocelyn Gage. And so she's kind of what's known as the Matilda effect, which is, you know, again, our culture's tendency to forget about the contributions of women to knowledge in general, but science in particular. And this is something that I found really great. This is the Wiki project on women scientists. So this is Wikipedia recognizing that they have a dearth, or at least a severe imbalance, of women scientists represented in their entries. And so this is a place where Wikipedians can collaborate, work on articles related to women in science. And then this is also where you can make and meet requests. So people have requested new articles about these women scientists. So these come from people that might not feel comfortable editing Wikipedia themselves, but they know that these people deserve to have their own entry and stuff. So if this is something you want to take into the future, coming to the Wiki project on women scientists might be a really great place to start, especially as we go into the free edit. And then this last resource is an interactive tutorial from UCLA. And so it takes you through a 7-mission interactive guided tour, right, where you complete modules. And by the end of it, you should be able to feel very confident in your Wikipedia editing skills. So I don't want to kind of duplicate what other folks are doing, but I think this is it. Like, I'd love to talk more, and then, you know, as we go through our free edit time with the remainder of our time together today, you know, that's great. And I'm just really thrilled that you all are here and glad that we can, you know, with some hiccups, you know, transfer this to an online format. So thank you so much.